Okay, so good morning. Today's daf is Bava Kamma, daf Samach Bet. We are actually at the top of daf Samach Bet, but before we get started, just wanted to note that our learning today should be for Refuah Shalema for Dan Eliyahu ben Devora, and hopefully he will have a full and speedy recovery, and looking forward to his getting out of the hospital and being well. So, okay, so where are we and what have we been doing? So let me share my screen and we will get started. So we've been discussing the laws of Aish, when fire does damage. And in the Mishnah that we learned on Daf Samach Aleph Hamabet yesterday, near the end of the day, we saw the following debate. Rabbi Yehuda says that if something's hidden inside a stack of grain and burned with the stack, the one who sets fire to the stack of grain is liable for what's inside. On some level, makes total sense. The Chachamim, on the other hand, saying, no, you're not liable because you didn't know what was in there. You thought you were burning a stack of grain, but you ended up burning a computer that was hidden inside it. And so as a result, so you're not going to be liable. But hello, Lori. But the Chachamim agree in the Mishnah that if you set fire to a building, God forbid, then hello, Mark. If you set fire to a building, then you would be liable for what's inside because everybody, because you should know that there's something inside. So this is what we're dealing with: is what happens if you set fire to something. Obviously, you shouldn't set fire, but you're going to be liable for the damages that you cause.
Rashi today?
Oh yeah, we'll have some Rashi and we'll have some Tosos, a little bit of both. But we have a debate between Rabbi Yehuda and the Chachamim. Rabbi Yehuda says that you're liable for what's inside the haystack. The Chachamim say you're not liable for what's inside the haystack because people don't usually hide things inside haystacks, but you would be liable for it inside your house. Now, that led to a discussion of a long brisa. The brisa began by noting that the Chachamim obligate one to pay for the stack of grain as if it was completely filled with grain. So when the Chachamim say that you're not liable for the computer that's hiding inside, if the computer took up 1 cubic foot, we'll say it's an old computer, it's an old CPU, it took up 1 cubic foot, so then you wouldn't be liable for the $1,000 of computer that took up that 1 cubic foot, but you would be liable for the $5 of grain that would have been in that cubic foot, assuming that grain goes for $5 a cubic foot. So that's what the first teaching of the Chacham have in that brisa. The brisa then says that when the Chacham say that you're not liable, that's when you set the fire in your own property and it goes and it travels to the other person's property and burns their haystack with the computer inside. But if you go into the other person's property and light their haystack on fire, guess what? You are going to be liable even for the stuff that's inside, even the stuff that's hidden. Okay? So that was the Chachamim. Then we went shifted in this brisa to the Rabbi Yehuda. And we said that Rabbi Yehuda would agree that there would be no liability for what's inside when I invite you to put your haystack in my property. So if I tell Mark that he can put a haystack in my property, and then he hides in the haystack a computer, then in that situation, Rabbi Yehuda would agree to the Chachamim that I'm not liable for the computer. Because what did I tell Mark that he could put into my property? I only told Mark that he could put a haystack in my property. He went ahead and put a computer in underneath the haystack. And so as a result, I'm not going to be liable if I burn down the haystack for the computer that's inside. And we then noted 4 different cases. One is if permission is granted for wheat. So I tell Stan that he can put a pile of wheat in my yard, but he puts in a pile of barley instead. So now that the pile burns, I'm going to only be liable for a pile of barley. After all, that's all I burn. Now, if on the other hand I tell tell, and barley's less expensive than wheat. So, and now, if on the other hand, if I tell Stan, you can put a pile of barley in my yard, and he puts a pile of wheat in my yard instead, then if it burns, then I'm only going to be liable as if it were a pile of barley, because that's the only thing I took responsibility for.
Egg barley, took by egg barley, right?
Yeah, so it's like egg barley, exactly. So then, now, what happens if I tell Stan that I can put he can put a pile of wheat, and he creates a pile of wheat that is covered by barley, so it looks from outside like it's barley? Well, then I will only be liable to Stan for barley because it looks like it's barley from the outside. And then if I give Stan only permission to put barley, and he puts a pile of barley that's covered by a pile of wheat, again, I'm only going to be liable for the pile as if it was all barley because I only gave permission to Stan for barley. So those were the four cases, and we're going to come back to that. But what these cases highlight is that when it comes to liability, what the person who did damage understood to be the case matters. Meaning, if I think that you put barley in my field, then I'm going to be liable based on that understanding that it's barley, even if it turns out to be wheat. And so we're going to pick up now on the 10th line of Samach Bet Amud Aleph, 62a1. So back a little bit from where you are at the moment. Keep going, keep going, keep going. And there you are. And so we're now up to Amar Rava on the 10th line. So Amar Rava, Hanosin dinar zahav leisha. If you gave a gold coin to a woman to watch the Amarla, and you told her, his hirubo shel kesefu, be careful with it because it's silver. Now, even in those days, silver was worth less than gold. So here we're talking about, again, silver being worth less than gold. And so as a result, he's warned her that it's silver. Now, hizikato, if she actually goes and damages the coin itself and essentially throws it into the sea, she burns it, it's completely gone. Well, then Mishalemet dinar zahav. She is going to have to be liable for what it actually was, not what he said, but what it actually was. Because let's say a gold coin right now, it's like $2,000 an ounce. So we'll say it's $2,000. But silver, I don't know exactly what silver is, but my guess is it's like $50 or $60 an ounce. Again, that's just a total random guess. We can look it up afterwards if you really want to know, because I don't know silver's price off the top of my head. But it's a big difference. But she would have to be, she'd be liable for the basically $2,000 for the gold coin. Because Mishum de Amrla, because the guy who gave it to her could say to her, why did you destroy the coin? Meaning, when you take an affirmative action to destroy the object, well, then it seems that you're going to be liable for whatever the object is. Now, we will end up limiting that over the course of today, but that's the general premise that we're going to see, and that we're going to have a tosos that will help us do that. So, but Pashaba, if in fact she did not actually go ahead and affirmatively destroy it, but was just her negligence that resulted in her in it being lost, well, then Mishalem Mishal Kesef. Then she only has to pay for the object as if it was a silver coin. So she would only be liable, $20, $100, something like that, to Amrale, because she could say to the owner, Nitzirusa bekaspa kabili alai. I took responsibility for a silver coin. I didn't take Nitzirusa dahava lo kabili alai. I didn't take responsibility for a gold coin. So that is case number one. Okay. Now, Rav Mordechai asks Rav Ashi the following, or notes to Rav Ashi the following. Amrale Rav Mordechai la Rav Ashi atun b'derava masnisula. You taught us all of what I just said in the name of Rava. That's what Rava says. But anan mimas nisa pshitalan. But we derived it from the brisa that we did outside as part of the introduction. Because what did we say in the brisa? If you were given permission for wheat, but you cover the wheat with barley, or if you have permission for barley and you cover it with wheat, the only thing you have to pay is the value of the barley, either because that's what you accepted, right? You accepted it as if it was barley, or that's what it looked like. So the point is that Alma Amarle, that shows that a person's able to say Netirusa desare kabile alai hachanami amrale Netirusa dedahava lo kabile alai. Right? Just as the person who was watching the piles can say, I only accepted the watching of a barley pile. And so too, this woman can say, I did not accept upon myself to watch a gold coin. I accepted to watch a silver coin. So that shows that we are going to allow her to make that statement. Okay, so now the question is, if one is the victim of theft, one may swear as to what was stolen to receive damages from the thief. So if we know that I stole something from Stan, because there are witnesses that see that I stole it, but they don't know what it is I stole. So Stan has the ability to say that, it was, a diamond, bag of diamonds that you stole, and therefore, if you make that oath, I would owe you for a bag of diamonds, even though I might be saying, no, I just stole a bag from you. I didn't steal anything inside the bag. So the point is I won't be believed. You could swear and you can take. But so now we're going to apply that to the issue of what happens if a pile of grain is burned and there was something inside it. So we're going to again allow the person who is the victim to swear and to receive. So Amar Rav Shamas Milsa Rabbi Yehuda V'lo Yadanamahi. Listen, I heard something from Rabbi Yehuda, but I don't know what it is. So Amar Shmuel, in a respectful way, says back to Rav, V'lo Yada Abba, you don't know my Shemile, what it is that you heard. The Rabbi Yehuda the Mechayev on this Tamud Be'esh. We heard with respect to Rabbi Yehuda's position that says that you're liable on what's hidden in the fire, hidden by the pile of grain and damaged as a result of the fire. Also, takanas nigzal be'isho. They set up the same rule with respect to theft. We applied it by a fire. So again, the person who's the victim can swear and collect. Now here we have a Rashi and a Tosfos. Let's take a quick look at each of them. So Rashi, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 lines up in the narrow lines of Rashi on Samach Bet Amud Aleph. Ki hechi tiknu rabbanan lenigzal lishba Kamma gazlu. That when it came to a theft situation, the rabbis established to swear how much was stolen, v'yitol, and the person's allowed to take. Ditnan b'Masechah Shavuos, as we will learn in Masechah Shavuos, Elu nishbain, these are the people who swear, v'notlin, and they get to take. Hasacher v'hanigzal kach tiknu b'isho, and so too they had a similar decree with respect to Aish when it came to fire. Sheyishba mahitmin, because you can swear what was hidden, v'yitol, and you'd be allowed to take. Again, this is according to the position of Rabbi Yehuda. Now, Tosfos adds another point in the third Tosfos on Samach Bet Amud Aleph. L'Rabbana nami hava matzi l'meimar da'asu takana bebira. That also remember that the rabbis, the Rabbanan in the Mishnah said that if you went and lit a home on fire, a bira can be a number of different things. It can be a tower. It can be translated as a tower. It can be translated as a palace. It can be translated itself as a fire. But in any event, we're going to understand it as basically a dwelling place. That if you were to because a dwelling place will have all kinds of things inside it. So we will assume that you will be liable for everything that's inside it. So the kol davar, that again, because the rabbis say you're liable for everything in it. Ubegadish ubemorigin, ubegadish ubemorigin ella rebusa ashmuinan, and in these other cases as well, you'd be liable for everything in it. And so as a result, Why did we teach it in the name of Rabbi Yehuda instead of the name of the rabbis? Because we wanted to teach us a greater teaching. Till Rabbi Yehuda, because according to Rabbi Yehuda, afilu arnaki begadish, even in a pile where it was even in a pile where it was hold on just a second, I just want to check something. Even in a pile where it was where it is unlikely, where you have some kind of chest that's inside it. We still apply it, meaning even if it's something very unlikely, like the computer that we were talking about, even in that situation, Rabbi Yehuda would allow the person who owned the pile of grain to make an oath and swear, even if it was something very unlikely that was in the pile, that you would be able to collect it. So that's the point. So the bottom line is that even according to Tosfos, even the rabbis would agree that there are certain situations where you can swear and collect if somebody lights something on fire that belongs to you, and there was something inside that the person who set the fire didn't know about. So now we're going to ask a series of questions, 3 questions that the Gemara is going to ask. And we'll see that the literal read has 2 of them, the first and the third, relating to this oath. The middle one is not clear whether it relates to the oath. The Rashba understands it as relating to the oath. Tosfos does not. We'll take a look at the Tosfos, possibly inside, maybe outside, and let's see what they say. So again, question number 1: Boya Meimar, Asur Takanas Nigzal b'Masur Olo. Let's say I go to the government, and really we're talking now. I think even it applies today. I go to the government and I tell the government that, listen, Stan hasn't reported all of his income as taxes, and as a result, you should take away this property that he has in upstate New York. And they go ahead and they take away this property that is in upstate New York. Now, that property, as it turns out, happened to have a chest filled with gold that I didn't know about, but Stan knew about. And Stan says, listen, you don't only owe me because what I did is not illegal in Jewish law. I'm not allowed to go to the authorities to report a monetary issue that Stan did. And so as a result, Stan has a claim against me. And so the question is does Stan have the ability to swear that there was this chest filled with gold in the property that was taken from him, and therefore I'm going to be liable for that as well? So Aliba demanda Amar lo dining did. Now, before we even get to that, we have to see whether I'm liable in the first place. Because according to the person, Aliba demanda Amar de lo dining dina de garmi, that we say that you're not liable for garmi. Garmi comes from the same root as the word grama, indirect damage. Now, there are going to be, as we have not really gotten into it, and this is not the place that we will get into it, but there are 2 categories of grama. There's a category of grama where it's really an indirect action, and we saw some of that a few weeks ago, where we talked about certain kinds of damage that you're not going to be liable for, that you would only be liable for in a heavenly court, but not in a human court. Like if I damage your contract. But there's something where it's a little bit more direct, and that's called garmi. And we're going to say that if I report Stan to the authorities, that's going to be a case of garmi. That it's almost as if I took the object. It's not quite. It's still indirect, but it's closer than the other categories that we've been talking about. And so as a result, if we say that even garmi, there's no liability, well, then, of course, I'm not going to be liable. And there's no point of Stan making an oath to say that there was a chest of gold in there. Lo tibailach, then I don't have a question. The masoras nami lo daininan, because then a masora, somebody who's a musor who reported me, who reported Stan, I would not be liable for anything. But elakidi bailach, where is the question apply? Aliba demanda amar dainan dinan digami, where we say that we are liable for garmi. Do we say that we have this gezerah of the takana of swearing and taking, just as we say by theft? We'll also apply it to somebody who's an informer as well, that you would be able to swear and take. Oh, lo, or do we not take? In the end, we don't have an answer to this question. So next, so that was question number one, no answer. Hahu gavra de batash bekaspasa de chabre. Now, let's say I kick over your money box, the shadje benahara, and it ends up falling into the river, and it gets lost. So there's nothing to be done about it. Asamare va'amar. Now the owner. So again, I'll have kicked Stan's money box into the river, into the Hudson, and it's swept away by the currents. So now Stan comes and says, "Listen, haki v'haki hababli begazva. I had these things in it." So Yosef Rav Ashi become ayin be. So Rav Ashi thought about it and was analyzing it. Ki hai gavna mai. What's the law in this case? So Amra le Ravina le Ravacha bre de Rava. So Ravina said to Ravacha, or Amri la Ravacha bre de Rava le Ravashi, or Ravacha was telling Ravashi, Lav hainu masdisin. Isn't this the same case of our Mishnah? Ditanan umodim chachamim le Rabbi Yehuda b'madlik esabira shemishalim kol zmasha betocho shekain derech b'nei adam lahaniach babatim. Shouldn't this be the case that we said, where if I affirmatively light somebody's home on fire, I'm going to be even the chachamim say I'm liable for everything that's inside it? So Amrale, he said to him the following. So Rav Acha or Rav Ashi said back, no, so you're absolutely right. If in fact what Stan said was inside the box was just coins, absolutely, I would be liable, because what do you keep in a money box? Money, right? Exactly. So hacha, but here, what are we talking about? To cut time marganisa. We're talking about a situation where Stan doesn't say there's money in the box. He says that there were jewels, there were diamonds in the box. So now, so what's the halacha?
Silver coins, right, in the money box?
Well, if there were silver coins, I would be liable for kicking the money box into the river. But if in fact there are jewels, mi manche inish marganisa because olo, do we allow? Do we say that people put jewels in a money box? So in other words, do we allow Stan to make the oath and collect? That's one way to understand it. Right. Okay, that is the way the Rashba understands it. And in the context of the last case and the next case, it makes a lot of sense for the Rashba to understand it that way. But Tosfos notes that the literal words of this question and answer, where we answer teku, we don't know the answer. The literal words of the question were not about whether or not Stan could swear and collect, but it was just about the liability itself. Maybe I'm not even liable in that situation. So let's take a look at Tosfos. Mimanche inshi marganisa bekaspita olo. Afilu yesh edim shahayabo marganisa mibaile. This question is being asked even if it turns out that Stan has witnesses that he put diamonds in that box. Deshema lo abai le la asuki adaite. The point is that, because maybe I didn't have any understanding of what would be in it. Lahai v'lo amrinan my havale gabe to azke. And what about the case that we saw where the woman did damage directly to the coin that Stan says was silver, but it turned out to be gold? To azke kevam, but we don't say And in that situation, when the woman affirmatively did damage, we said that the man could say, "What are you doing damaging my thing?" Right? Why are you damaging? Because kevan de lo regili inshi la anuche klal. Because the point is that it wasn't something that people would put inside at all. The lo dami ladinar zahav. It's not a case of a gold coin de lael that we saw earlier. De ibai la asuki adaita tvei de pamim sheomer kain di yare sheim haisa yodat shehu shel zahav lo haita shomrato. Because people know that there is a chance that a person will tell you, listen, would you watch this for me? It's a silver coin, not because it's actually a silver coin, because they don't want the person to be so worried about it being a gold coin that it's a that they wouldn't be willing to watch it. And so as a result, because that's actually a likely thing to have happen, Toso says that's why when the woman actually affirmatively damages it and throws it into the river or kicks it into the river, as in this case, she will be liable, because we could say, what did you go ahead and do that kind of affirmative damage? But here with the money box, the question is it normal for people to put jewels in their money box? And if it's not normal, then you shouldn't be liable. Velo dami nami la arniki begadish. And at the same time, it's not such an extreme case like the chest in the pile of grain, of hay. De regilin tvei de manchi marganisa bekaspasa. Because it's more common to put jewels in a money box, right? So as a result, we're not going to put it in the extreme case that we have of a chest in a haystack and say that you're not liable at all. And we're not going to put it in the category of a gold coin where the person tells the person watching it that it's a silver coin, because that's common and people should need to be worried about it. But we're going to put it in the middle category. And that's our question, according to Tosos. And he says specifically, don't say that the question here is about whether or not you make an oath and get to take. Because if we're talking about the takana of theft, where you get to swear and take, that you would be believed that you could say that there was some jewels inside. What's the point of saying to Rav Ashi that it's our Mishnah? Because my inyan zed Mishnah seinu. Our Mishnah wasn't talking about whether or not you swear and take. Our Mishnah was talking about underlying liability. So again, in the context of the words of this discussion, Tosos makes a lot of sense, because the words of this discussion seem to be more about whether or not there's liability in the first place. But again, in the context of the three questions, and here we're going to now go to the third question, you can understand where the Rashba is coming from. So what's the third question? So Amrle, Rav Yemer, Rav Ashi. So now, just so that you get where we are, we're 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 7 lines down in the wide lines of the Gemara on Samach Bet Amud Aleph. And so Rav Yemer says to Rav Ashi, Tan kasba chasba beviramai. What if one says that I had a silver goblet in my tower, right? So what's the law? So Amrle, Rav Ashi explained, Chazina, we're going to take a look. Inish Aminhu, is this person a person of measure, namely a wealthy person? De'isle kasba chasba, that he's going to have a silver goblet? Or inami inish mehemnahu, or he's a very trustworthy person, demafkade inshigabe, that people would put and store a silver goblet with him. In that case, mishtaba v'shakal, then we'll allow him to swear and to take. The ilo lav kol kamine. If not, we're not going to believe him. So we've now qualified, and in a very important way, the principle that says that anything in your home that you have, if I go to your home and I burn down your home, you can claim anything against me. Because no, you can't claim anything against me. You can only claim what would be reasonable in your home, and I'll become liable. and you would swear as to what that is. That was the Tosos that we saw, the first Tosos that we saw today, and then I would have to pay you that amount. Of course, if you could prove that what it was there, then that would also be an alternative. But it seems like even if you could potentially prove what was there, if it was something that was so unlikely to be there, then maybe the rabbis would still say they would make it like the case of the haystack. Because remember, in the haystack, if you find a computer inside, the rabbis, the chachamim, say you're not liable. And so as a result, according to the chachamim, which is, of course, how we paskin, I'm pretty sure, so you would not be liable. And so as a result, actually, maybe that we pass like Rabbi Yehuda, but in any event, the point is that the Chachamim would say that that if it's something that isn't in there, then you wouldn't be liable. That it would never be in there. It wouldn't be liable for it. And that was the question that we were asking just before with respect to the jewels that were in the money box. Mm-hmm. Okay, so the Gemara is now going to change topics a little bit and help us set up the topic of the next chapter of Masechet Bava Kamma, because we're going to talk about theft in that chapter. So let's take a look. So Amrle, Rav Ada Brei de Rav Avya, the Rav Ashi. So Rav Ada said to Rav Ashi, Ma ben Gazlan lechamson. What's the difference? We have two words. Gazlan, for often used in connection with an armed robber, some kind of force thief, and a chamsan. Chamsan from the word Hamas, which is violence. So what's the chamsan? So what's the difference? So Amrle chamsan yahiv demei. A chamsan gives money. The Gazlan lo yahiv demei, but a Gazlan doesn't give money. So what does that mean? It means that when the chamsan takes something from you, so I go over to Stan, I see his nice hat, I take his hat and I say, that hat's worth $3. Here's $3. That's the story. And tough luck. You're going to take what I give you. So that's what a chamsan is. Whereas a Gazlan goes and takes the hat and says, I'm going to just take the hat. Okay. And tough luck to you. So Amar Le, Ravada says back, second, chamsan karisle. Do we really call somebody who gives money a chamsan? V'hamar Rav Huna, we have a statement of Rav Huna, Chalua v'zabin zvine, that if in fact I were to go and take Stan and hang him upside down until he sells me that hat, and now Stan sells me that hat, you know what? It's a good sale. Even though I shouldn't do that, and I've probably violated various mitzvot in the Torah, but the sale would be a valid sale. So how can we say that the person who does that is called a chamsan if in fact we say that it's a valid sale? It would seem like that would not be a concept of theft. So lo kasha, no difficulty whatsoever. The question is when Stan finally agrees to sell me the hat, has he actually affirmatively made an agreement or has he not? So if in fact Stan says in response, great, listen, take me upside, stop hanging me upside down. I'll sell you the hat. In that case, we're going to say it's a valid sale. But if I just walk by, take the hat, and leave $3, that's where I'll be a chamsan. And so that's what the Gemara concludes in that situation. Okay, so now, and again, this really is a tee up for the next chapter, as is often the case. Now, we're now going to interrupt that tee up with an aside that is very unique, or one of a few places in Shas. This is a Mishnah that references Hanukkah. So let's take a look and we'll see. So gates sheyatza mitachas hapatish v'hizik. If you're hammering, if a blacksmith is hammering his metal and sparks are shooting out, and one of those sparks goes and does damage, chayiv. I'm gonna be liable as the blacksmith. So gamal shahaya ton pishtan v'avar b'rishos harabim. Now I'm a camel owner and I own a camel and I've got it filled with flax. Flax is very flammable. That's a very important piece of this. And I loaded my camel with a wide load. You know how you see on the road those signs, wide load. So I have I even put on the at the back of my camel, I put wide load. But the problem is the following: my camel, which is leaning from side to side as it's walking, the flax sticks into the shop, and unfortunately, the shopkeeper happens to have a light, a flame, a lantern right at the entrance on the inside of his shop. And so the nichnas pishtanola tochachanut, and my flax goes into the shop. Vidalko b'nei shel chenveni, and it gets lit on fire by the shopkeeper's lamp. V'hidlik as a bira, and now I set fire to the entire building. Baal Gamal Chayav. I'm going to be liable because I shouldn't have put such a wide load on my camel or I should be more careful with the wide load to make sure it never enters the shopkeeper's location. So, however, if the shopkeeper has the fire outside his store in the public thoroughfare, now who's liable? The shopkeeper's liable because now he needs to be the one that's careful. He's going into my space. I'm allowed to be in the public thoroughfare, and he has to be careful with his fire. So the shopkeeper will be liable for burning down the building. So Rabbi Yehuda adds the following caveat, and here these are the unique words. I think it's only 7 or 8 places in all of Talmud Bavli, all of Mishnayos and all of Shas. So B'ner Chanukah Pater, when it comes to the candles of Chanukah, then that's going to be not liable because I should assume that the shopkeeper is going to have Ner Chanukah outside his home, outside his shop. And so as a result, in that situation, I won't be liable. So Amar Ravina, Mishmei Derava, Shmami Nami Rabbi Yehuda. Maybe we can learn the following from Rabbi Yehuda. Ner Chanukah, mitzvah lanicha b'toch asara. Maybe you need to put the candles of the menorah relatively low down to the ground. Because if you thought that you should put it above the ground, Amai Amar Rabbi Yehuda, Ner Chanukah Pater. Why would Rabbi Yehuda say that you're not liable? Lemale, let the person who was damaged say to the shopkeeper, Havale la'anucha lamala migama l'verocho. You should have put it higher than the load of my camel, right? Why should I be liable for getting my camel in your fire? This reminds me of the classic Reese's peanut butter cups of you got peanut butter on my chocolate, you got chocolate in my peanut butter. But the point is why should you be liable why should the camel driver be liable for having his flax get into the flame? The flame should have been higher up. Just lift the flame and nobody would have been damaged. So the answer is, so isn't that a good proof that it shows that the flame has to be relatively low down to the ground? Amre lo. They said no, it doesn't actually prove it because la'olam emalach afilu l'malam asar. Really, I could tell you could even be higher. My amrat. But why and when it comes to the fact that you challenge this by saying that maybe the camel owner should be able to say to the shopkeeper that you should have put the flame above the height of the camel and the rider. Since the guy's doing a mitzvah, we're not going to trouble him. The point is when you're doing a mitzvah, we're going to let you do it in whatever way you want. And so even though you could have lifted it, we're going to say that you're not liable for failing to have done so. Rav Kahana, Darish Rav Nasan, Barman Yumi, Mishmei, Rabbi Tanchum, Ner Chanukah, Sheinicha Lamalam Esrim Ama, Psula, Kesuka, Uchemavoy. That when it comes to having your candles be above 20 amos, then we're going to say that's not valid. because 20 amos people don't look that high.
Right.
And so as a result, just as we say that the schach of a sukkah is not going to be valid if it's 20 amos high, and just as we say that the crossbeam of a mavoi that enables an eruv is not going to be valid, so that's going to all be we're going to say the same thing with respect to Hanukkah candles. As Rashi says, here's our Rashi. Lo chaz, top line in Rashi on Samach Bet. L'malam asrim ama lo chazi la inshi. People don't look that high. Below mefarsim nisa, and you don't get any publicity of the miracle. But anan lifarsumi nisa beinan. And when we light the candles of Hanukkah, the purpose of doing so is to publicize the miracle. All right, so that gets us to the 6th chapter. So let's do the Mishnah and a little bit of the Gemara of this gets us to the 7th chapter of Bava Kamma. So let's do the Mishnah and a little bit more now. But as an introduction, we're going to deal with the laws of theft, and we saw some of these laws last week. We saw that there are two main types of theft: Geneva and Gezela. And in fact, we were talking about it just before we got started. The first one is done secretly, while the second one is Gezela is done openly. And although the halachot of Geneva often relate to the act of the taking more than the loss of the victim, while the halachot of Gezela often focus on the loss to the victim rather than the act. But in any event, the Mishnah is going to address the obligation to pay back double, kefel, or 4 or 5 times, which is what you're liable for. If you steal a sheep or a goat, then you'd be liable 4 times, an ox 5 times. If you steal it and then either slaughter it or sell it. So if you do the 2 actions, and Shadal, Shmuel David Lutzato explains this as sort of creating the proper incentives, because what happens when you steal an animal and slaughter it or sell it? You have made it more difficult to catch you. And so as a result, we are going to increase the liability in that situation so as to create a proper disincentive for you to engage in such behavior. But okay, so that's the background. Let's take a look and see. We're going to see that Meruba Midas Tashlume Kefel Midas Tashlumi Arba V'Chamisha, that the double payment is more common than the 4 times or 5 times payment. Shemidas tashlumi kefel no hages bein bedavar sheyesh bo ruach chaim ubein bedavar she'ein bo ruach chaim. The double payment applies both to things that are alive and things that are not. Ubemidas tashlumi arba v'chamisha. But when it comes to the 4 times or 5 times payment, eino no hages ela b'shor v'seb bilvad. It only gets applied to an ox or a sheep, and sheep includes goat. Shneamar ki yignov ish shor oseh utzvacho omecharo. As the pasuk says, this is a pasuk in Shmot Parakaf Aleph pasuk Lamed Zayin, where it says that if a person steals a sheep, an ox or a sheep, and he slaughters it or sells it, he's going to pay he'll pay 5 cattle for the ox and 4 sheep for the sheep. So Eina Gonev Achar Haganav Mishalim Tashlum Kefel. If Stan is a thief and Stan steals this computer, and then Mark steals the computer from Stan, Mark will not be liable for the double payment. Okay? And similarly, if Stan steals my ox, and then Mark steals it from him and slaughters it or sells it, so Mark is again not going to be obligated to pay back the 4 or the 5 times. We will see that basically, because Mark is not obligated in the double payment, he's also not obligated in the 4 times or 5 times. All right. So now the Ilu Midas. Now we're going to start the Gemara by attempting to derive a lesson from the fact that the Mishnah only mentioned the type of item stolen to show that double payment is broader than the 4 times or 5 times payment. We could have referenced other aspects. And let's take a look. The ilu midas tashlumi kefil no hagas bein beganav bein betoin tinus ganav. So we know that a double payment is something that even if Stan gives me his phone to watch, and I say it was stolen from me, and I'm an unpaid watcher, so I'm not liable for theft. And I say, sorry, Stan, it was stolen. But then Mark and Charlie happen to see me talking on Stan's phone, and they see that the pictures on the phone are Stan's pictures. So they know that I've actually now taken Stan's phone. So now I'm caught. And now I swore that Stan's phone was stolen from me. I'm going to be liable for the double payment. Now the question is what happens if we were, instead of talking about Stan's phone, we were talking about Stan's sheep? And it turns out that not only that when Mark and Charlie catch me, they catch me eating Stan's sheep because I've slaughtered it. And so the question is would I also be liable for 4 or 5 times? Now, if in fact we say I would not be liable for 4 or 5 times, well, that would be an example of a way in which double payment is broader than 4 or 5 times payment, because I'm not liable for 4 or 5 times payments in this case. So Omidas tashlumi arba. So what's that going to be? Midas tashlumi kefil no hegas bein begana bein beton tanis gan. So when we say that you pay double with respect to a thief who says to a watcher who says that it was stolen by a thief, umudis tashlumim arba b'chamisha eino no hegas ela begana bilvad, and we say that paying 4 times or 5 times only applies to somebody who actually is a thief and not a watcher who claims a thief stole it. Lo katani, but our Mishnah didn't claim that. So Messiah le Rabbi Chia bar Abba. That seems to be a proof for Rabbi Chia bar Abba. The Rabbi Chia bar Abba, Rabbi Yochanan, haton tanis gana b'fikadon. That in fact, if you were to make a claim of theft with respect to something that you're watching, Mishalim Tashlumi Kefil, you have to pay double. The Tavachu Machar, and if you slaughtered it or sold it, Mishalim Tashlumi Arba B'Chamisha, you'd have to pay 4 times or 5 times. So isn't that in fact a good proof to support Rabbi Chia? And Ikada Amri, there are those who reframe this last discussion of the last 30 seconds to just say Lema Misayele Rabbi Chia bar Abba, to make it an affirmative statement and say, let's say that our Mishnah supports Rabbi Chia bar Abba. The Amar Rabbi Chia bar Abba, Amar Rabbi Yochanan, Haton Tainus Gana B'Vikada, Misham Tashlumi Kefil Tavachu Makar, Misham Tashlumi Arba B'Chamisha. We can just say it directly. We don't need to make any derivations. It's pretty clear. So no, because Mikatani Ein Bain. Did we in fact say in our Mishnah that this is the only difference between double payment and 4 or 5 times payment? No, we didn't. So Meruba Katani, there are plenty of things. We just said that it's more inclusive. So Tani V'Shayir, we can have as many omissions as we want in that situation. And that's why we don't actually say my shire to high shire, because only when we say we give an exact number do we say that if you left out one thing, you must have left out multiple things. But when your language itself is indefinite, and you say that there are ways in which the double payment is broader than the 4 or 5 times payment, the fact that we listed one doesn't preclude there being any others. And so as a result, that's where we'll pause. We're at the 2 dots on Samach Bet Amabet, and we'll pick up from there. Next, the Gemara is going to provide the source for the fact that a thief is liable for double payments, both for living and non-living things. But for that proof, please stay tuned for tomorrow's daf. Wish you a wonderful day. Again, we wish a refuah shalema, Dan Eliyahu ben Dvorah, and hopefully we'll check out the weather, and hopefully Mark and Lori will be able to join us again tomorrow as well. Have a great day, everybody. Bye-bye.
Have a good day.
Thank you.